I canceled my wedding because my sister needed me. At least, that's what my mother said. But when I came home unannounced, I found Lena curled up like a broken doll in a room that smelled like fear. Our house was silent, cold, and Mom, off on a cruise with her new friend, sipping cocktails like nothing was wrong. I thought I knew what betrayal looked like. I was wrong. There was something under Lena's bed, something that made my blood run cold. And that was only the beginning. If I had arrived a day later, I don't think I'd still have a sister. I started recording that vlog as a way to process. This isn't a drama, I told myself, just a story about family. I sat on the edge of my hotel bed, camera propped against a stack of books. I looked into the lens and said, "My name is Haley Thompson, and I gave up everything for my family, until I realized they were quietly unmaking me." The first time Mom called at 2:03 a.m., I was half asleep. She was sobbing. "Lena's not eating. She won't get out of bed. She's fading, Haley. You're the only one she'll listen to. Please, baby, I can't lose another child." I canceled my wedding that week, told Derek it wasn't the right time. "Family comes first," I said, tears choking my throat. He didn't argue. He just walked away, like a man dodging a falling building. Now, 2 months later, I sat in the back seat of a cab, headed toward the house I grew up in. Rain tapped softly on the window. I scrolled through my photos, my dress, the venue, my bridesmaids. Then I saw one of Dad and me, taken just before he passed. He looked proud, and I looked happy, genuinely, stupidly happy. I bit my lip and closed the app. The cab pulled into the driveway. The porch light was off. The yard, once meticulously kept, was now overgrown and wild. I stepped out, my heels sinking into the mud. The house loomed darker than I remembered. I knocked. No answer. My key still worked. The moment I opened the door, a smell hit me, like old milk and something metallic. I whispered, "Lena." Silence. I walked deeper into the hallway, heart racing. The clock in the living room had stopped. Dust lined the furniture. Picture frames lay face down. And from the top of the stairs, a voice floated down, barely audible, hoarse. "Don't let her see you like this." I froze. "Lena," I called again. No answer. I climbed the stairs slowly, feeling the air grow colder. Her room was cracked open. I pushed gently. She was there, sitting on the floor in a corner, knees pulled to her chest, eyes fixed on nothing. Her hair was greasy, skin pale, lips cracked, a thin blanket wrapped around her like a shell. "Lena." I dropped to my knees. Her eyes shifted, just slightly, but she said nothing. "Hey, it's me. I came home." She blinked, once, slowly. Around her were bowls of moldy cereal, empty pill bottles, torn pages. A phone lay shattered on the floor. "I brought your favorite," I whispered, holding up a chocolate croissant from the bakery she used to love. She didn't react. I spent the next hour cleaning. I scrubbed the sink, opened windows, changed her sheets. The bathroom mirror had lipstick writing scrawled across it. "Not crazy if they are watching." After putting Lena to bed, I checked the kitchen. Every drawer looked rifled through. The fridge was empty, except for a rotting orange and expired yogurt. I opened the oven out of habit. Empty. Then the fireplace. Something caught my eye. Tucked behind the grate was an old, scorched notebook. I pulled it out carefully. Lena's handwriting. Page after page of paranoid rambling. Phrases like, "They lock the door at night," "Mom hides the meds," "She whispers with him on the phone." And then, one line, over and over. they watch me sleep. But there was more, several pages written in tight Latin script. I didn't know Lena spoke Latin. In fact, I was sure she didn't. I kept reading. One page ended with, "Do not trust her. She lies with his name in her mouth." Who was she? Mom? I stood slowly, heart pounding. I walked back upstairs to check on Lena, and as I adjusted her pillow, something hard shifted beneath it. A photo, Dad's funeral. All of us were in it, except someone had been carefully cut out of the picture. Not just cropped, cut cleanly, as if to erase them from memory. I held the photo to the light. Behind the missing space, I saw the edge of a suit. A man's. But it wasn't Dad. That photo had been altered. I looked at Lena. Her breathing was shallow but steady. I whispered, "Who did you cut out?" No answer, but I had a new question now. And I knew this trip home wasn't about helping Lena recover. It was about finally uncovering everything we'd buried. The next morning, I woke early to silence so deep it pressed against my skin. Lena was still asleep, curled beneath the freshly changed blankets. I tiptoed downstairs and made coffee out of stale grounds. Then I noticed the blinking light on the answering machine, 7 missed calls, all from Mom. I didn't call her back, not yet. Instead, I opened my laptop and clicked into her shared cloud account. She wasn't exactly tech-savvy. A folder marked Cruise 2025 appeared. I tapped on the most recent video. My breath caught as the screen lit up. Mom, in oversized sunglasses, sat beside a man in a floral shirt, champagne in hand. "Cheers to freedom," she said, clinking glasses with him. The camera panned and my chest locked. John Halberd. I hadn't seen him in over a decade. We were in the same ethics and society seminar. He'd asked me out repeatedly, once left roses on my windshield. I declined every time. He always stared too long, stood too close. I told my roommate he's the type that memorizes your schedule and calls it romantic. Now here he was, smirking beside my mother, hand on her knee like he owned her, and she, laughing like a schoolgirl. Then came her voice, shrill, flippant. "Lena's probably curled up crying with her damn pillow like she always does. Drama queen." I slammed the laptop shut. For a moment, the room spun. I let out a laugh, sharp and humorless, then covered my mouth. The laugh turned into something broken, something leaking out of me. I walked into the living room, where sunlight slanted through dusty blinds. I poured a glass of Dad's old whiskey. The bottle was nearly empty, but the smell hit like memory. I sat on the couch and stared at nothing. Dad and I used to go fishing every summer. I was 12 when I caught a catfish the size of my leg. He lifted it with one hand and said, "You see, kid, sometimes the quiet ones fight the hardest." I took a sip. It burned down my throat like regret. The glass slipped. I reached for it and knocked the bottle, which rolled off the table with a dull thud. When I picked it up, something inside rattled. I froze. Unscrewing the base, I found a thin coil of foil tucked tight inside. My fingers trembled as I unwrapped it. It was a folded medical receipt, dated 2 weeks before Dad's death. To Dr. John Halberd, Re Charles Thompson, diagnostic code, suspected neurotoxic reaction. I stared at the page. The air felt thinner. My brain struggled to connect dots that shouldn't even exist together. John had treated my father? I looked up at the ceiling as if answers would be carved into the drywall. Back upstairs, Lena was stirring. I sat beside her bed. "I saw Mom," I said softly. She blinked, her lips dry. "On the cruise." "With John Halberd." Lena's eyes widened. Her hands clenched the blanket. "You remember him?" She nodded, barely, then whispered, "He's the one who came after Dad fell. I heard them talking about pills, about not saying anything. I didn't speak, just pulled out my phone and typed a message to Mom. Hey, just wanted to check in. Lena's doing okay. Miss you," she replied in under a minute. "Finally, I knew you'd come to your senses. She's just looking for attention, as usual. Don't let her manipulate you." I recorded every word of her voice message and archived the texts. Later that night, I sat in my childhood room, scrolling through Dad's old laptop. Most files were spreadsheets and budget notes. Then I found a folder labeled simply July. Inside were photos, receipts, and one video file, 4H. I clicked play. My father appeared on screen, pale, seated in the backyard. "If you're watching this," he said, "then something went wrong. I don't trust your mother anymore. I love you, kid, but keep your eyes open." I paused the video. The breath caught in my lungs was heavier than anything I'd ever held. Down the hall, Lena was awake. I found her sitting up, eyes clearer than they'd been. "She lied," she said. "Mom made me sign something. She said it was for a delivery, but it was a property form." I saw her shred the originals after. My hands curled into fists. She reached for mine. "I'm sorry I never told you sooner. I was scared." I squeezed her hand. "You don't have to be anymore." We sat like that, two broken women in the ruins of a house we used to call home. I knew then I hadn't just come to help Lena. I came to dig up the truth, and I was going to find all of it. I watched the video twice before I could breathe properly again. Dad sat in his favorite lawn chair, the one with the ripped armrest, framed by the overgrown garden. He looked thinner, paler, and his voice was quieter than I remembered, but his eyes were steady. "If you're seeing this, Haley," he began, "then something happened, something bad, and it wasn't by accident." I leaned closer. "I think I'm being poisoned. It's slow, subtle. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm just paranoid. But if I'm right and I die soon, don't let them say it was natural." He paused, as if weighing whether to say more. "I wanted to leave everything to you girls, but I know your mother. She's not who you think. Don't trust her. Look for the poem. It'll tell you what I couldn't." Then the video ended. I sat frozen, hands still hovering over the keyboard. My skin felt too tight. Poem? I tore through my father's old files, desk drawers, the boxes in the attic. Finally, wedged in the back of a scrapbook from my 8th birthday, I found a piece of folded paper, faded ink, my name written across the top. It was a poem he'd written for me once, about stars and secrets and hiding places. But now, reading it again with fresh eyes, I saw it was more than nostalgia. Each stanza had capital letters at odd spots. Every third line included numbers that didn't belong. I scribbled the pattern on a napkin and within 20 minutes cracked the cipher. It was a login code. I typed it into Dropbox. A folder appeared. June, final recordings. Inside were 7 audio files, labeled only with dates. I clicked the first one. Mom's voice. "You think she suspects anything?" John. "Not yet, but we need to increase the dose. 1 more week and we're done." My stomach flipped. Next file. Mom again, colder this time. "He's becoming forgetful. It's perfect. If he dies now, no one will question it." I couldn't listen anymore. I sat back, tears sliding down my face. He knew he was being murdered. And still he left us clues, not to punish, but to protect. Downstairs, Lena was still asleep. I left her a note and drove across town to the law office of Richard Kellen. He had been Dad's attorney, and I remembered his name from some old paperwork. Mom had fired him 2 years before Dad died. The receptionist led me to his office, where he looked up with faint recognition. "Haley Thompson," I said, voice steady. "I think you knew my father better than most." He studied me for a moment, then opened a drawer and pulled out a sealed envelope. "I hoped you'd come," he said. "Your father gave this to me a month before his death. Said to wait for you." I broke the seal. It was a copy of Dad's original will. And it wasn't what I expected. Everything, house, insurance, investments, was left to Lena. Not split, not shared, all to her. Kellen watched me read, then said quietly, "He worried you'd be strong enough to survive this, but Lena, he said she'd be the one they'd go after." I sat back, stunned, not because I wanted the money, but because I finally saw Dad's fear mapped out in legal ink. He knew Mom would come for it, and he tried to shield the one most vulnerable. I swallowed hard. "He was right," I said. "She's barely holding on." Kellen nodded. "He asked me to hold this in case of foul play, but I wasn't the only one he trusted." I looked up. "What do you mean?" "There's someone else," he said. "Someone he contacted before making the video. A witness, possibly the key to everything." I straightened. "Who?" He opened a locked drawer and slid forward a business card. The name on it made my chest tighten. A woman I hadn't heard from in years, not since the funeral. And if Dad trusted her, then maybe she knew the parts of this story I still hadn't uncovered. I told Mom I wanted to surprise her for her birthday. "A tribute video," I said, "to celebrate everything you've done for us." Her voice on the phone was sugar-sweet, suspiciously so. "Oh, darling, that's lovely," she cooed. "You know I've always hated attention, but if it makes you happy." I hired a small crew of filmmakers under the guise of documenting a family legacy. The kind of thing suburban boomers adored: soft focus interviews, scanned childhood photos, a sappy soundtrack. The party was booked at a local country club, classy enough for Mom's ego, not so grand it would raise questions. I controlled every detail: florals, lighting, seating arrangements. Most importantly, I set up 4 hidden mics and 2 wide-angle cameras, one directly above the family photo zone. I knew they'd hover there, pretending to be close. The invitation list included everyone she trusted, friends, cousins, even John, who RSVP'd with a simple, "looking forward to it." I smiled when I read it. Perfect. On the day of the party, I wore navy blue, neutral, safe. Lena wore a soft yellow dress, the one she'd begged to burn months ago. Now she stood straighter, chin higher. Her hair, newly cropped to the shoulders, framed her face like armor. Mom arrived in a silk floral dress, faux humility, dripping off her like perfume. "This is too much," she said, but still paused for every photo. We mingled, ate tiny salmon cakes, toasted to family. Then I called for silence. "Before we cut the cake," I said, stepping onto the small stage, "I wanted to share something, a video, just a little montage of memories, some old, some recent." The lights dimmed. The projector whirred to life. At first, it was predictable. Baby photos, home videos of Lena blowing candles, Dad laughing in the garden. Then, slowly, things shifted. The next clip was grainier, recent. Mom's voice. She's just looking for attention, as always. "John, one more dose, that's all it'll take." Gasps spread like wildfire. Mom's laugh echoed from the speaker. Haley, she thinks she's so smart, but she always folds when it counts. The room fell silent. I stood perfectly still, watching her freeze, champagne glass halfway to her lips. Her smile cracked. Someone whispered, "What is this?" I stepped off the stage and walked to the gift table. I held up a manila envelope. In here is the original will my father left. You'll find that every asset was intended for Lena. Not you, Mom. She moved toward me, voice shrill. This is a joke. You think you can manipulate people with some cut-up audio? John stepped beside her, face flushed. You're fabricating all of this. I looked at him, calm. Funny you say that. I extended the envelope toward him. Would you like to open this for the crowd? He grabbed it, ripped the seal. What he didn't know, I'd coated the inside flap with forensic tape. His fingerprints would now be on the document. Keep that, I said. So you'll need it when the authorities ask how your prints got on a will you shouldn't have touched. Before either of them could speak, a woman from the back of the room stepped forward. Short gray hair, nurse scrubs under her jacket. I was Charles Thompson's nurse, she said, and I kept a copy of his toxicology results. They were clean when he came in and filled with sedatives by the end. I have the originals. I've kept them quiet until now. Mom's glass hattered on the floor. From that moment, everything moved fast. Phones came out. Someone began live streaming. By the time the police arrived, the internet had already claimed its headline, "The Daughter Who Outsmarted Her Mother." 2 days later, Lena and I sat in the living room watching it all unfold online. A clip of Mom yelling, John pushing a camera away, me calmly standing with a USB in hand like some kind of war general. The comment sections read like poetry. Protect Haley at all costs. This is Netflix-worthy. Plot twist after plot twist. But nothing compared to what came next. A whistleblower, anonymous, hacked into Mom's old cloud backups. Private folders emerged, photos of her with not just John, but at least 4 other men. Dates overlapping. Trips funded by withdrawals from Dad's accounts. She had a pattern. John wasn't her partner. He was a pawn. I stared at the screen, disgusted. Lena sat next to me, scrolling through old photos. She paused on one, her smiling at a zoo, maybe 8 years old. She cropped it, added a filter, and posted it. It was the first photo she'd ever uploaded of herself. The caption read, "Still here." I couldn't speak for a long time, just stared at her, amazed. Then my phone buzzed. An unlisted number. I opened the message. It was a single line. You still don't know who was behind the land transfer in 2018. The number traced back to a real estate firm. After 3 days of pushing, cross-referencing documents, and one long call with a junior clerk who apparently loved coffee bribes, I found it. The 2018 land transfer, 5 acres of woodland just outside town, had been signed off by someone named Claire Whitmore. The name meant nothing to me, at first, until I saw the middle name, Thompson. The deed included a birth certificate tucked in the scanned files. Mother, Marla Thompson. Father, Charles Thompson. Daughter, Claire Ann Thompson, born in 1985. I dropped my phone. Claire wasn't some stranger. She was my sister. I called Richard Kellen, Dad's old lawyer, and read the document out loud to him. There was a long pause on the other end. I never saw that name on any of Charles's files, he said. If she existed, it was kept from almost everyone. Lena sat next to me on the couch, her fingers clenching a cushion like it was the only thing tethering her to earth. She was pregnant before us, she whispered. I nodded. Apparently, and she didn't terminate. She gave birth and abandoned the child, and now that child is a lawyer. It took 2 more days to track Claire down. She worked in another state, Chicago, a partner at a litigation firm. Her credentials were impeccable, her track record brutal. When I reached out, I didn't expect a reply, but she called me the same night. Her voice was measured, but I could hear the hesitation beneath it. "I wondered when you'd find me," she said. "I only just learned you exist." "Mom called me a mistake," she said plainly. "She dropped me off at a shelter 3 weeks after birth, left a fake name, but I did my digging." "And the land?" I asked. "She used me as a loophole," Claire explained. "Filed it through my name because she thought no one would trace it to her. I didn't even know until recently. Found it buried in old financials tied to a trust." We agreed to meet. The next weekend, Claire came to town, tall, crisp, poised, but there was something in her eyes that mirrored my own. Survival, pain tempered by intelligence. She shook Lena's hand gently. "So you're the one she kept." "And I'm the one she broke," Lena replied. Claire smiled sadly. "Then maybe I'm the one she forgot could fight back." Together, we filed a comprehensive legal case against Mom and John. Forgery, financial manipulation, medical deception, coercion, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. Claire led the charge like a general. She was relentless, precise, but never cruel. I began to understand why Dad might have trusted her, if he'd known. The court date loomed, evidence mounted, and then, out of nowhere, an investigative journalist reached out. "We're doing a piece on toxic matriarchs, hidden monsters in American families," she said. "Would you be willing to go on record?" I hesitated. The idea of broadcasting our pain made me nauseous, but Lena nudged me. "If you don't, she still controls the story." So I said yes. The article hit the internet like a lightning bolt. Comments poured in, survivors, supporters, people who'd lived through their own mother-shaped nightmares. The legal machine ground slowly, but when it did, it crushed with precision. The judge ruled in our favor. The audio, the forensics, the nurse's testimony, unshakable. Mom was found guilty of willful deception, financial abuse, emotional manipulation, and obstruction in a medical investigation. John was stripped of his license and fined. The court ordered Mom into a psychiatric rehabilitation facility for non-compliant sociopathic behavior with narcissistic delusion. I watched her during the final hearing. She sat in a beige suit, face blank, no makeup, hands folded. When asked if she had anything to say, she looked at me, calm, cold. "You think you've won," she said. "You think you're better than me. I'm a product of a world that made women choose between survival and silence." She stood. Her voice never rose. "You just had more resources than I did." That should have felt like a victory, but it didn't. After court, Claire drove us back to the house. Lena fell asleep in the back seat, finally relaxed. I stared out the window, remembering Dad's laugh, the way he used to sing out of tune on purpose, just to make us giggle. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt empty and free at once. At home, we sat around the kitchen table. Claire poured coffee. Lena scrolled quietly. Then my phone lit up again. A new email. Subject, book proposal, Harper Gray Publishing. A sharp editor named Naomi wrote, "We loved the article. If you're ready to tell your story, we think the world is ready to hear it. We'd suggest a hopeful ending. Something redemptive. Clean. What do you think?" I showed the screen to Claire and Lena. Claire raised a brow. "You gonna give them what they want?" I stared at the message, then chuckled. Redemptive ending? I muttered. I'm not even sure there's such a thing. The farmhouse was small, quiet, no security system, no buzzing elevators, no traffic sounds at midnight, just the creak of wood, the whisper of wind through the orchard, and a sky so wide it made you feel small in the best way. I'd chosen it for a reason. It was just far enough from the past and close enough to Lena and Claire to build something new. The first few mornings I woke to peace, and then on the fourth I woke to her voice, crying, the exact way she used to sound on those 2 a.m. calls. She needs you, Haley. You're the only one she listens to. Except now it was just in my head. I made tea, sat on the porch, let the wind carry the echo away. Some ghosts, I realized, weren't meant to be exorcised, just heard and released. That afternoon, I drove to the cemetery alone. It was time. Dad's grave was where we left it. Simple, honest. I knelt, brushing away a few dead leaves, and placed a small notebook against the stone. Its cover was blank. Inside, just one sentence, handwritten in blue ink. Now begins the chapter I write for myself. I stayed for hours, talking to him about things I wished he'd seen. Lena's first full laugh in years, Claire pouring coffee like she'd always belonged, the silence after Mom's sentencing that tasted like oxygen. I told him I wasn't angry anymore. And for the first time, I meant it. That night, back at the house, Lena knocked softly on my door. She held out a small black USB drive. I've had this for months, she said. I was going to delete it. I couldn't watch it then. What is it? She didn't answer, just pressed it into my hand and left. I plugged it into my laptop, heart in my throat. The first video was shaky, clearly recorded on an old phone. Lena sat cross-legged on the floor, hair long and tangled, face thin. But her eyes were direct. If I'm not here when you see this, I just wanted to say thank you for not giving up on me, for seeing me. She sniffled, wiped her nose. I don't know what's going to happen, but if I end, it won't be because I was weak. It'll be because someone made me feel invisible for too long. Another video loaded. She looked stronger, days or weeks later. I'm still here, and if I survive this, I'm going to find a way to make it count. The third video, she smiled. For the first time, I don't hear her voice in my head anymore. I hear mine. I watched all 6 videos in silence. Then I knew what I had to do. The next week, I launched Bloodline Echoes, a podcast for survivors of family abuse, coercion, manipulation. Not to sensationalize, but to tell the stories the world tried to bury. I recorded the first few episodes alone, late at night, under a blanket to muffle the sound. I told my story, all of it. The response was immediate. Thousands of messages from women, men, teenagers, people in offices, people in shelters, people who still lived with the monsters they weren't allowed to name. Each episode, I read a letter, shared a truth, offered a resource. By the 10th episode, I wasn't alone anymore. I received a message from someone in another country who said, I used your voice as my alarm every day. It reminded me I had a choice. Claire helped me register the podcast as a nonprofit. Lena designed the logo, a cracked mirror forming a phoenix, and me, I wrote again. One night, I set up a small camera, sat at my desk, turned on the lamp, and hit record. My name is Haley Thompson, and I used to think survival was the end of the story. But I was wrong. It's the beginning. I closed the notebook, stood, and walked to the window. Outside, the orchard was gold with late summer light. On the wall beside me hung a new photo. 3 women. Different hair, different eyes, but the same look of earned peace. Haley, Lena, Claire. I looked into the lens one last time and smiled. You were born into a family, I said, but you can choose your legacy. Then I shut the laptop, pulled the window closed. Sunlight spilled across the table, across the photo, and the house finally was quiet.